Every literary text is a word on its own, be it a poem, a drama text, and a novel or a short story. So every literary word is a word on its own. And in each literary word, the author can be likened to the God of that universe. The author can be likened to the God of that world. So the author, poet, a novelist, so the writer is basically the God in every literary text because he creates the participants of the story. He creates the participants of the story. He decides what happens to them. He decides their actions, what they do. So, which is why, like we are characters in God's grand story, characters are also participants. They are participants in the story by a writer, in the story written by an author, in any literary text written by an author. So characters are participants in a literary text. They are participants in a literary text. So, and of course, characters can be animate. They can be animate and they can be inanimate. They can be human beings and they can be animals. So they can even be beings. They can be beings. They can be inanimate. They can be inanimate things. So this is what a character is. A character is basically the who of a story. So the character is a participant in a story. So the author, who is the god of the story, decides what the character does, how the character behaves, what the character says, and how the character advances the plot of the text. And characterization, on the other hand, refers to that process, to the process of creating the character, the process of creating the character, the process of portraying the attributes, qualities of that character. That is what characterization is all about. Well, in talking about characterization, we can even liken it to George Herbert's visualization of God's creation of man in his metaphysical poem, The Pulley. He writes, when God had first made man, having a glass of blessing standing by, let us, said he, pour on him all we can. Let the world riches which the sparse lie contract into a span. So bringing that analogy, the analogy of when God was creating man, when we bring it to the concept of characterization, we can say yes, the author is here. Then the his glass of blessing, his glass of a blessing is here. His glass of blessing is somewhere, and then of course his character. His character is there. So when the author decides that the character must be greedy, he takes from the glass of blessing, then bestows that attribute of character. When the author decides that a character's life must be complicated, he brings, then if it is restlessness, he brings that restlessness and bestows it on the character, blesses the character with it. So the author determines what the character becomes, what the attributes of a character. He's more or less like a god in that story, and he can decide. He can decide whatever happens to the character. He can decide what the character does, what the character says, how the character is perceived, how the character is perceived by other characters. So this is what characterization is all about. This is what characterization is all about. And for character, we have different types of characters. So we have the major characters, we have the minor characters, and the major characters are more involved in the story than the minor character. And even under the major characters, we have the protagonist, and So we have the protagonist. So we have the antagonist. Well, the protagonist is that character, that central character that the story follows, that the story revolves around. While the antagonist is always in conflict, and is usually in conflict with the protagonist. He opposes the protagonist every which way, and the two contribute to the plot development of the text. And then, of course, on the other hand, we have a dynamic or rand character, and then we have a static or flat character. So for the former, that's a dynamic or rand character. It refers to that character that undergoes changes, that undergoes transformation in the text. So, and a good example of this is Ada. Ada in Buche Mecheta's The Second Class Citizen. So, at the beginning of the text, Ada is a young girl who aspires to go to school, who aspires to break barriers that has been set for her by her immediate society. She wants education, the same type of education a male child gets. Then she has always wanted to travel abroad. She wants to she's inspired by lawyer Inweze's return from England at that point. So, and later on, she marries. A lot of her ideologies changed when she had to battle or struggle with a very lazy husband in the person of Francis. So, other in second class citizen, other in second class citizen, in second class citizen is a good example of a dynamic unranked character because even biologically she undergoes transformations. And then we have to talk about transformation, behavioral changes, etc., etc., and even ideological changes too. But the static character is very predictable. A static character is very predictable. A static or flat character, it doesn't change from the beginning of the text to the end of the text. So it doesn't change at all. It doesn't change. So that's who a static or flat character is. In fact, unlike a dynamic or run character, static, flat, or flat characters are predictable. They are predictable. You can predict what they would do next because they do not undergo any change, any changes. And a good example of this is a Eugene in Chimamanda Adichie's Purple Hibiscus. We can see from the beginning of the text to the end of the text, his character is predictable. He's that strict disciplinarian who is very harsh, who is very harsh to his children. So you know this one is a traditionalist. It doesn't change. It does not change from the beginning of the text to the end of the text. And in the same light, we can say someone like Kambili in that same text. Kambili in that same text is a good example of a dynamic character. She goes from being a shy girl to someone to someone aware of our environment. That's awareness and everything. So everything changed about Kambili in the text. She becomes bold and assertive towards the end of the text. So this is for character and characterization. We say the character is the who of a story. The character is the who of a story. They are the participants. Characters are the participants in a story text. While characterization is the process of creating those characters, the process of adorning those characters with attributes, with everything that would make them plausible, that would make them believable. And then when you talk about character, because you come across questions asking you about who a character is in the text. So when you talk about character, when you talk about character, you can decide who a character is based on what he says. That's a speech, his actions, his actions. Then of course his thoughts, his thoughts. Then okay, and then the perception, the perception of others. So the perception of others about that character, that's how to determine who a character is. So this is what a character is all about. So like I said earlier, imagine the word itself. This word itself is just a prose text or a drama text, and God Himself is the author. And we as human beings, then the animals, then the things, the immaterial things around us, and everything are characters in God's grand story. So that is what character and characterization are all about. That's what the concepts are all about. So I believe we now understand who a character is and what characterization is. Thank you. Till our next video.